Just a few minutes over here. We're just going to discuss about Pesach Sheni. So we all know that we spoke this morning in the halacha. In the halacha this morning, there's a ganze tumul if you're going to go ahead and say Tachanun tomorrow, and then we added on whether you say Tachanun today by Mincha. The ganze shayla. But I want to really discuss why in our times, if you may say, Apidush, we make a bigger deal of Pesach Sheni than Amol, the Gezeiten. And what is Pesach Sheni? How does it mean to us? And what's the takeaway? Siyata d'shmai. So first, we start with the Rashi in Baleischa. As Rashi says in Baleischa, by the Pasuk, it says Lo Manigora. So Rashi says over here, Oy b'derech ha'choyka, that somebody wasn't able to go ahead and perform the Korban Pesach bismanin. So Rashi says Pesach Sheni matzah v'chomet imei b'bayis ve'ein shem yomtiv. Rashi is really quoting a Gemara in Pesachim, but Rashi clearly says "Ve'ein shem yomtiv" on Pesach Sheni, which means Rashi is making clear that it's not a yomtiv. What exactly is Rashi moisef? That's the ganze shayla hatul and Rashi. I'm not here to tell you the pshat. What I'm trying to tell you from Rashi is that Rashi is giving us a clear declaration that Pesach Sheni is not a yomtiv. Okay, so I have a few questions over here. That Siyata d'shmai, I'm trying to explain what exactly is going on Pesach Sheni. So first question, all about the Shakasha. We call Pesach Sheni the second Pesach. That's a little translation in our time. Chayro, it's not a second Pesach. It's one Pesach, a Korban Pesach that everybody has to bring. Either you're bringing it in a first day on your Daled of Chodesh Nisan, or you're going to go ahead and bring it on Pesach on an Iyar. But what's a Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach? Now the second question everybody asks, the Chayra, what happened to Psukim? We have a Gemara in Sukkah. It tells us that we're Tmei Nefesh. Why they were Tmei Nefesh? There were some people because they were busy arguing Reinish Yosef or Meis Mitzvah. The Gemara says they were Isaac in a mitzvah, but they came close. They contaminated themselves with a deceased or dead person. And when they were Tamei Meis, they were not able to go ahead and do the Korban Pesach on Chodesh Nisan. So they came to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, Lama Nigora, why should we be left out? Which means, why should we be left out, not able to go ahead and do a Korban Pesach? And the Pasuk says, Anachnu Tmei Nefesh, we were Tmei Nefesh. And everybody asks, what's the question? You already said the answer. The reason why you didn't have a privilege and opportunity to go ahead and do Korban Pesach, because you were Tmei Nefesh, and somebody's Tmei Nefesh can't be a Korban Pesach. But the question is, whatever the Pshai can tell me, there's Arachayim, a lot of the Mefarshim on the Chumash explain what's the Pshat in that. But why Davke, by the mitzvah of Korban Pesach, was a Torah Mechabish, a new parsha? Imagine somebody comes in, okay, this happens, a good or bad. Let's say a guy is having his wife has a baby on Purim, and he's a young yeshiva shabocha, and he's geschmacking a man now, and his best holiday is Purim, right? His only day of the year, his wife lets him go drink, and he gets high, he gets excited, and he has in the hospital, on Purim he has a baby. And it's, it's a lot of balagan in the hospital, crying, emotions, high and low. Kids, he comes to the rabbi a few days after Purim, the rabbi wishes him mazel tov, he's like, Loma Nigora, why did I lose that on Purim? So you think that Moshe Rabbeinu is going to go, the rabbi is going to ask a shayla, will give another opportunity on Purim, that he's going to be able to celebrate? When it comes to Sukkah, we don't find somebody that isn't able to do the mitzvah of Sukkah, you're going to give an opportunity. Dafke, there's a miyuchad, there's a tifkite over here. Dafke by Korban Pesach, where they were Tmei Nefesh, they were not able to perform the mitzvah. Only by Korban Pesach, we gave them another opportunity to go and do it, which means, you could say there was a mikra. Punkt happens to be there was one mitzvah, but there's a tifkite over here that we only find that a new parsha was mischadish. You read the parsha of Aleischa. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know the answer. He asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? There was a new mitzvah was mischadish based on the craving of the Yidden that wanted to go ahead and perform the mitzvah. They wanted to be part of the mitzvah. They got the mitzvah, which means it's a tifkite, the Davke Korban Pesach. So there's a the Yaakov Emden, we see the Yavitz, everybody brings this down, that explains, he's from the Shita that says you don't say Tachanun. But Pashup Shat, why you would say don't say Tachnun, is because we're bringing a carbon Pesach. It's like a Yom Tiv. So like, for example, there's a lot of times that an individual can go ahead and not say Tachnun. A Chosner, for example, a person that makes a bris milah, so Shulchan Aruch, that he's the Baal Bris, the Svar Matoshim, by bringing a bris milah, to go ahead and they're bringing to bris milah, he's to go ahead as like a carbon. I mean, him by mincha, he doesn't say Tachnun also, the Baal Bris. So there is ideas that if somebody that has a carbon, brings a carbon, is his own personal Yom Tiv, doesn't say Tachnun. So you would think the same thing. The pshat is because they're Yechidim, that on Pesach Sheni, we're bringing the carbon Pesach. So Memela, because of that, you're not going to say Tachnun. The Yavitz over here says, and he says this pshat, that Erev Tam Pesach Sheni show, he says, you don't say Tachnun on Pesach Sheni. The Tam Pesach Sheni, why you don't say Pesach Tachnun? Shukra be'ir gilalim min hashemayim, which means he's bavoning a kasha. He's asking a kasha, l'chayro, they were upset. Why were they left out? Okay, so now we're going to give you a second chance. But the Yavitz is asking, why 30 days later? Why can't you give him 7 days? You have 7 days, somebody's tummy mace. Take 7 days process to go ahead and purify. Put out adumi, sprinkle him. Let him bring a carbon right away. I think he's asking, Vosep is 30 days. So he says in Moedi Gevar, he says that this pshat was Gilu min hashemayim. The Fishaboy Kolsa Charoda Shaitim Mitzrayim. Klal Yisrael, when they were coming out of the first year of Mitzrayim, they had Ugois, Matzahs, they had to go ahead and take quickly Matzahs, they had to go ahead and take Seidel Derech, if you may say. And says the Yavitz, those amount of cookies that they baked in Mitzrayim lasted enough matzah for the journey up to 30 days. And then Melo, says the Yavitz, the Fikach Ad Kan Nimshach Neis Yitzis Mitzrayim V'achilas Matzah V'chein Pesach Sheni Matzah V'chametz Imeh B'bayis K'moishe V'pamisha. Hari Dover Bor Lefonecha. The Yavitz is saying has nothing to do with the risk that we don't go ahead and say Tachnun on Pesach Sheni tomorrow. It's nothing to do because we're bringing a carbon Pesach, not Pshat. The Pshat is the Yavitz is saying because we're finishing up the matzah that we were able to eat in the year we came out of Mitzrayim, and now right after we finished eating the matzahs, the next day the month started. Aranchab. First of all, the diak of the Yavitz, if you medayik, like you're making a Yom Tiv, not a Yom Tiv. You're not saying Tachnun because today is the day that we're finishing what we took out of Mitzrayim. It doesn't say, oh, today we're starting the miracle of the man that we go ahead and rely on Kadosh Baruch Hu. It doesn't say that. And also, what are you saying that Yitzias Mitzrayim, Tachilas Matzah? So it seems from the Lashon of the Yavitz, if you could be medayik, that there's Pesach Sheni is a connection to the first Pesach. And is a connection to the nest of Yitzias Mitzrayim, the miracle of Yitzias Mitzrayim. And Befrat, which really is Bavonim the Gemara, I didn't understand this. The Rambam, the Gemara says this the whole time. But every time they bring down the concept of Pesach Sheni, it's always the Pesach Sheni, Matzah v'chametz imeh b'bayis. Mazel tov, Aranchab. There's no issur of a bayiro by matzah today. The Rambam says, the Gemara tells us on Pesach Sheni, and everybody by now already went by, they got the pizza. Everybody in this room has stomach ate a slice of pizza since Pesach. I don't know if it's so. They go crazy for pizza. But of either matzah Pesach or the next day, everybody has to have a slice of pizza. So what's over here telling me, oh, Pesach Sheni, you can have Pesach and matzah imeh b'bayit. I don't understand. Rashi says this, basically Gemara, that every time they present Pesach Sheni, it's always about matzah and chametz imeh b'bayit. I don't understand, Apidush, what's the pshat of it? So I was thinking of pshat, a Josh pshat. There's a stick of steer in the Rambam over here that I was learning, that I was trying to understand what's pshat in the Rambam. The Chayro, one could understand that simple, the mitzvah of Korban Pesach is a mitzvah of Tashlumin. Tashlumin means, by definition, if somebody, like Josh, for an example, Tashlumin, very practical, if somebody, let's say, for example, did not daven mincha today, he was very busy, he was oinus, so Tashlumin, he has an opportunity to go ahead and daven Ma'ariv twice. But what's the lumdus over there? The lumdus is that you're doing the first tefillah for Ma'ariv, and in Hilchos Tefillah we give you an opportunity to go ahead and do another tefillah, and it makes up, which means the Hainu, the Mefarshim explain, every day a person has to have 3 tefillahs, okay? And if you miss the Zman of tefillah, we're going to give you an opportunity to make up. But the concept is Tashlumi Darishan, like the Gemara Chagiga tells us, right? Like Karban Chagiga also, 7 days after Yom Tov, the same idea, a person has the opportunity to bring a Karban Chagiga, but it's all a make-up thing. I believe, on the simple pshat, when you read the Chumash, Lama Nigara, and when Hashem says that the mitzvah of Karban Pesach Sheni, and the opportunity to go ahead and do a second time, the second time is a second chance to go ahead and fulfill your first obligation. So that means, would come out, that this Pesach Sheni would only be applicable to somebody that was obligated on the first Pesach, and he didn't able to perform his obligation. Okay, so we're going to give you a second chance. Would come out somebody would not be obligated, he wouldn't be mechuyev in Pesach Sheni. Now I found the Rambam over here, but the Rambam says clearly not like what I'm saying. The Rambam says in Parakeh Halacha Zayin, the Rambam says Gersh Niskayer ben Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni, a ger that comes, goy comes a convert, when somebody comes a convert between the Pesach and Pesach Rishon, Pesach Sheni, and Chein Koton Shehigdil, a Koton that came a Godel, which means he came an adult, a Bar Chiyuva, Ben Shnei Psachim, Rambam Befurish Chayovim Lasses Pesach Sheni. So Rambam is saying clearly that a person, even though he was exempt completely, a goy is not mechuyev in Karban Pesach. A Koton, some minor is not obligated in Karban Pesach. And nevertheless, the Rambam says, if you came a Bar Chiyuva and obligated in the middle, you're chayiv in Pesach Sheni. It's Amachab. And Rambam means it's a medik, whatever, there's another dik from Shachta B'Rishon, Potter, to Shaila, what does that mean? It's shaykh to be part of the Chabura, but I'm not going to go on that Nakuda of the Rambam. I'm bringing you a Nakuda from the Rambam that I don't understand. If the Pshat in the Karban Pesach, Pesach Sheni, if you may say, is only a makeup, it's only possible a makeup if you're obligated. If you were not obligated in the mitzvah, there's no such thing as makeup. So the Chayra from this Rambam, it would indicate to say that there's a Tifa Lomdus over here, that Pesach Sheni is a regular b'fnei atzmai. It's a, even if like the Rashi says it's not a Yom Tiv, but it's an opportunity by itself. And it was Nischadish, this Yom Tiv, this opportunity to do it again, that even if you were not obligated to go ahead and make a Karban Pesach on the first Yom Tiv, Pesach, you could still be encompassed, included into this Pesach Sheni, that you'd be obligated to go ahead and bring a Karban Pesach. Now, this Nakuda, which I'm saying, L'choira, I found another Rambam, that L'choira alludes to this idea. The Rambam says in Perek Aleph, Misha Yitomei B'Shas Shchitas HaPesach, She'en Sheichtun Allah, V'She B'derech HaChoyko, Nez Oidis Achar. So Rambam says, they go ahead and do the second Yom Tiv, the second Pesach. She'en HaSheni Tashlum and the Rishon, El Regel B'Fnei Atzmi. The Fika Chayav on the Karas, Rambam was talking about if you didn't go ahead and do a Karban Pesach, Rishon and Sheni, Chayav the Karas about. So this is the longest Rambam over here. Rabbi Dush, if you want to like extract and talk about it like this, is Pesach Sheni, a Chakiri could have, is it a Rega B'Fnei Atzmai, it's a Yom Tiv for itself? When I say Yom Tiv, an opportunity to do a Karban Pesach by itself, it's not necessarily linked to the Pesach Rishon. Or you want to say it's a Tashum Rishon, which means it's all opportunity to make up for the first time. But El Chayra, when you read the Psukim, and they're learning the Mefarshim, there seems to be some places contradicting each other. For the Psukim, it's mashma, that it's a tashlumin. The whole way I was presented Lama Nigara, and then the parasha was given. But for the Rambam, I'm not saying Rambam Chumet, I'm saying for the Rambam himself, there's mashmois that it's not a tashlumin, it's a regular fniyat. So I was thinking, like, how do we reconcile, if you may say this two together? So l'chayro, one could say that l'chayro, you're right. It's a tashlumin. It's triggered the Lama Nigara because of Pesach Rishon. But once it was established, it was its own Yom Tov. Now I want to elaborate what I'm saying up Hitush. Now I want to say a Dush Pshat to explain that there's a link between the Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. And that's what we call a Pesach Sheni. It's not like a second carbon. It's a second Pesach, which means, like the Yavit said, the idea of going ahead and not saying Tachnun and Yom Tov, or whatever, on Pesach Sheni, because the Nes of Yitzias Mitzrayim is Nimshach at Pesach Sheni, which means there is a link, there's a connection between the first day of Pesach to Pesach Sheni, which means the avodah, if you may say, the lessons, there's things that we grew from Pesach, is connected to the Pesach Sheni. So I was thinking of Pidush, Mamash Atush, and could argue that we know there's two inspirations a person had. Kedushas Levi many times, and a lot of Hasidic Svarim write this idea that there's a Seres Del Elio and a Seres Del Tata, which means there's an inspiration from above and there's inspiration within, which means there's moments that a person, or times, Tkufas Ashana, if you may say, on a broader level, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought into the world, into the midst, this ruach, this spirit of inspiration to go ahead and do better. Like we find by Pesach, the pasuk says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the pasuk tells us clearly that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim, as we all know. Klal Yisrael Shekua and Mem Tashari Tumah. They would have stayed a little bit longer. They would have went, okay, but they were so Shekua that Hashem pulled us out of Mitzrayim, and that was an inspiration from with above, which means that's a whole shayla. Klal Yisrael deserve, not deserve it. What Moshe Rabbeinu himself asked, what mitzvah Klal Yisrael deserved to go ahead and to be zeicher to come out of Mitzrayim. But the Mefarshim explained that the element of Pesach was an element of Yisrael Leil. However, there's another type of Yisrael Tata, which means a person works on himself, which means he doesn't have the surroundings, the lofty spirit, you may say, inspiration to do better. But with a person within himself works on himself, he's able to inspire and to change himself. And really, this element, you might look at the Chodesh Hashanah, the calendar, there's some Yom Tovim that came with Klal Yisrael, the Tshuva, with themselves, and that inspired the miracle. Sometimes the Klal Yisrael themselves didn't do anything. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to pull out Klal Yisrael, like Pesach, for example. But the Mefarshim explained, the Bali Musa, Bali Machshava, that there's two types of tzaddikim. There's some tzaddikim that naturally they're born, as we say, Josh, goody goodies. They're born in the shamas. You may say they're boxed. They go ahead, since they're born, they didn't have crazy challenges. They didn't have crazy highs, no crazy lows. They're like on a neutral cruise. They went to yeshiva. They had a good environment. They passed almost every single test. And the only thing they had suffered in trauma in their youth is because the mother one day forgot to give them lunch, and the mother brought a lunch to yeshiva. Meaning everything was done kisito. Their life was done, and their avodah is to constantly grow on their level. And there's a bechin of a tzaddik, which learned Tanya writes that at the level of the highest tzaddik is so high, he doesn't even have a temptation to go ahead and do the Yitzhar, which means he killed the Chol B'Kirbi, the Tanya writes. He killed the Yitzhar, they don't even have any sign anymore. But he's still cruising higher and higher and higher level. But there's some element, that we call it tzaddikim, or maybe in our Shpach we call it Bali Tshuva, that people that went ahead and they had big highs and they had big lows. And they went ahead and they weren't living on a cruise their whole life. They had huge challenges. And they fell many times. But their bechina of Bali Tshuva is an element of going ahead, and like the Gemara Yuma tells us, when they do tshuva, the Rambam tells us, "B'mokim shebali tshuva and b'mitzadik kom yochel lami." What's the pshat? So pshat is we learn the Gemara Yuma tells us there's tshuva me'ava and there's tshuva me'yira. There's tshuva out of fear and there's tshuva going ahead of me'ava, which means that the Gemara tells us clearly that when somebody does tshuva me'ava, his aveiros comes zechuyos, which means that taiva, that lust, that temptation that he let go and he went ahead and pursued it, and he went ahead and he pursued an aveiros. But after going through the process of going and doing tshuva, that whole element, that whole experience, if you may say, not only was an aveiros transformed into zechuyos, but the Tanya, and I say this to everybody, I say this to myself every day almost, that if a person needs to learn this Tanya in Perek Chazayim, because there are most people, and a lot of people especially that I know, that they constantly have a battle. They're not on the level of a tzaddik. They didn't conquer the Yitzhar yet. They still have a temptation. And every single day they wake up in the morning, they have a temptation to go ahead and do bad, and they work on themselves to go ahead and fight the temptation. But a lot of people, and myself included, we want to feel accomplished. We want to feel achieved. We want to feel that all the effort that we put in to go ahead and fight the Yitzhar goes someplace. A lot of people, after many years of working on themselves and trying to conquer the Yitzhar and fighting the Yitzhar, They can wake up 5 years later and one morning they have the same temptation that they had 5 years before. And they feel like a failure. They feel that all their work they didn't put in and it didn't go anywhere. They still the same type, the same Yitzhar, the same Mishigas. The mind is blowing all over the place. They can't control themselves. And they feel like all the effort went into waste. But the Tanya writes, and it's very important, and he says these words, a person cannot get depressed. He can't let himself loose and go ahead and give up. He can't go ahead and be hard on himself and make himself like I feel like a nobody or nothing because I didn't accomplish anything. Even if your whole life you're going to have this war, this battle of same Yitzhar you're fighting every single day, maybe, says the Tanya, you were created, your neshama that came in this world wasn't to be the neshama of a tzaddik to go ahead and conquer the Yitzhar and to live on that level that is so disconnected from the world. Maybe your neshama came in this world to go ahead and have a constantly battle. And this is your avodah, which is teeth. Which means your avodah is not to go ahead and say, I conquered the Yitzhar. Your avodah is to be humble, and explain to that. And that every morning you wake up, you don't have that element, oh, I accomplished, that achieved. But every single day, I have that battle, and I'm able to conquer the Yitzhar, and I control myself. And every time that I'm able to skafia, to go ahead and sit achatom, to go ahead and overcome, says the Tani that gives nachas ruach HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which means it's a different perspective. We always look at the end goal, accomplishments, achievements. That's what we're so, especially today, we're so busy with, that's what we reward ourselves, our children, how much we accomplish. But truth of the matter, Yiddishkeit, the Ramchal says, the job is not to finish, your job is to do. Which means every day that you wake up in the morning, you have a Yitzhar, and you don't pursue the Yitzhar, you're a winner. You give nachas ruach HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and your whole tachlis here in this world is not to serve yourself, it's to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Tanya is ma'arich in this. There's a level of, that's the element of a certain type of tzaddik, which means an element of a Baal Tshuva, which means you're going to fall. But by you going and constantly working on yourself and not allowing yourself down, not being hard on yourself, allowing yourself to go ahead and fight, to give you strength. So your element of a bechina, of somebody like a bechina, of a Baal Tshuva, that does tshuva me'ava, a bechina, that takes a virus, nasas chuyas. Which means this is something which is very important to learn well inside and constantly remind yourself, because if you're not going to do this, it's automatically, chas Hashem, human beings will fall into depression. But if you remember every day that I don't give in to the Yitzhara, I am accomplished. So that's the minachas ruach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you wake up in the morning, this is my tafki, this is my avodah, this is my achievement, this is my accomplishments. That gives a person to go ahead and do it. So I was thinking, Bidush, this will bring him back to Pesach Sheni. This element is really what's going on in Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni. Pesach Rishon is where it represents the concept of a tzaddik. The element of a tzaddik that's put in a situation, the environment is going for him, his neshama is for him, his temptation, everything is, he's normal. He's, as you may say, he's regulated. Today nobody's regulated, so I don't know, he's not normal. But he's regulated, which means he's not a high, not low, he's a tzaddik, he's a bechina. That's the element of Pesach, a bidush. That Hashem took us out of them test Shari Tulma. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim. And he did Eser Makos. And he did Kriyas Yamsuf. And he gave us the Mon, and he gave us the Be'er, and he gave us the Mon to go ahead and to live. That's the element of the Pesach Rishon, an element of a tzaddik. But the Pesach Sheni, this is very well, I was thinking of Bidush, is the Bechin of the Bali Tshuva. Pesach Sheni is the element of Chometz and Matzah Ime Babayis. Chometz represents the Yitzhara. The Matzah represents the Yitzhatoif. Ime Babayis, which in his house, which means he's struggling. He's juggling between the Yitzhara and the Yitzhatoif constantly. And his Avodah, that the Baal Tshuva is Lama Nigara. And Pshat is the only way for this person to actually go ahead and to grow and to come closer to Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's not going to work from external, screaming, Musa Shmuz. It's going to come within himself, where there's a tremendous bikush, tremendous shuka, desire to go ahead and come closer to Kadosh Baruch Hu, when there's an element of Lama Nigara. When I'm going to go ahead and when they were saying Lama Nigara, that's where it's able to go ahead and be a level of a Baal Tshuva and able to take that element and transform these Averos into Yitzhak Tov and to Schiyos and able to go ahead and fight conceits. I was thinking of also maybe Dush, is that pshat why Korban Pesach Sheni, the Rambam, the other Rambam later on says, it's only by Yechidim. If the whole tzibur was Tamei Meis, then there'll be the Korban Pesach, the first Pesach. Because the Svar Magdoshim right, Rabbi Shemesh writes, these neshamas that have these tremendous big battles, it's Yechidim. It's not everybody. Not everybody is able on this level to go ahead and to be such a challenge, Toiv Ra constantly, and to, not to give up and to fight the battle. So I was thinking, this is what maybe we could explain the Pesach Reisha and Pesach Sheni, Laman Igora. But I was thinking, this episode still it doesn't answer the question, what's the idea of Dafka Pesach Sheni? So the Meshach Chochmah that I saw, the Meshach Chochmah says something special in Parashas Balois over here by the Laman Igora. The Meshach Chochmah says that what's so special about the Korban Pesach, what's unique about the Korban Pesach. So Meshach Chochmah the Marach over here and explained that the whole idea of Pesach, the Korban Pesach, Moiro al Hashkocha Protis. Why? Because to show that Klal Yisrael is different than all the nations. Now Kadosh Baruch Hu that was mavdil by the Korban Pesach between Bechor, who was the firstborn and not the firstborn. And Memelo, there was an element of that tremendous Hashkocha Protis that was done when Klal Yisrael, when they were in Mitzrayim and they brought the Korban Pesach, when they tied the shepsel to the door of the bed, the bedpost that didn't go ahead and Mitzrayim didn't go ahead and kill it. The fact that the go ahead HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mavdil between Bechor and not Bechor, which means that the element of the Korban Pesach is so much deeper than a regular mitzvah, as the Meshach Chochmah is saying. Meshach Chochmah is saying over here that the element of the Korban Pesach shows tremendously the Hashkocha Protis, which means that the highest level for a person to live like a tzaddik and to really conquer his Yitzhara, the only way a person who has these neshamas that have constantly challenges, there's only one way. If he has tremendous emunah and believing that Hashem put him in this situation. His family situation, his surroundings, his talent, his defaults, his challenges. If a person understands B'amunah Shalemo, that Kadosh Baruch Hu gave him this nisoyin, gave him this tremendous neshama, then he's able to go ahead and come to a level of Laman Igora, and he's going ahead and bikush to go ahead and to come closer. So Pshat is Apidush. The Pshat is this is a very tifa musar, that musar hashkafa of going on in life. The Pshat is that our avodah is always to grow. And our avodah is to give nachas ruach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to come closer to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There are some people that serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the surroundings, they grew up in yeshiva, good family, good friends, they never touch a cigarette in life. For the camera, that's what I have to give an example, right? Afterwards I can give you other examples, yeah? They never did any Averos, that's tzaddikim. There's other people, the neshamas, to a certain extent, they yechidim, they had tremendous nisyonis, tremendous challenges, tremendous highs, tremendous lows. And the only way they're able to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and how they're able to transform their thing, is when they come to a deep level of Laman Igora. And you know why Korban Pesach? Because only with the tremendous Hashkocha Protis that they live with, that's the only way for them to go ahead, and for us to go ahead and to conquer. Shkoyach. Any others?